What is up, everybody? Welcome to another edition of the Weekend Roundup. Thank you so much for tuning in. And as always, before I jump in, be sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any of the content I put out on YouTube every single week. Pretty much going to talk top four races today, both with what happened in the Premier League and what happened in Serie A, starting in England, and specifically these two games on Sunday. Arsenal beat Newcastle, Manchester United lose to West Ham. And so now you have a much more interesting top four race. Newcastle, 34 games played, 65 points. United, 34 games played, 63 points. Liverpool, 35 games, 62 points. And Brighton, only on 55 points, but have only played 32 games. So they are in this conversation as well. And I really thought this was kind of done and dusted and that we knew who our top four were going to be. And I still feel that way about Newcastle. Newcastle has some work to do to actually get this locked up. But they were excellent for most of that game. They had Arsenal on the ropes in the first 15 minutes and then don't close down Martin Odegaard, and all of a sudden Arsenal are winning. Then Arsenal add a second. Ramsdale comes up with a couple key saves. Really, this was a story of just Newcastle not having the final product they needed. I don't come away from that game concerned about the rest of the season. They've been good enough in front of goal. It just didn't happen for them in this game. They created loads of chances, though. And that will always be the thing that I worry about most. They haven't proven themselves to be a team that can't finish. It was just one of those days for them. But you saw what they were able to do in the trouble they caused Arsenal. I still feel very good about their chances. Manchester United, if you're going to ask me, to me, they still finished top four, but I do not feel anywhere near as confident in them as I do Newcastle at this moment based on form. You have the De Gea mistake for the goal, the second goal that gets disallowed, the missed handball on Victor Lindelof. It could have been much worse than it ended up being score-wise standpoint for Manchester United. They caught some breaks. And I've mentioned this about De Gea before and my goalkeeping philosophy, but I'll bring it up again after another one of these mistakes happened. I don't care how good of a shot stopper you are if you can't be trusted to do the basic things. And De Gea has proven over his time at United, he can't always be trusted to do the basic things. And you saw it again here with that goal. Yes, sometimes he's the best player on the field and he can win you a game in a way very few goalkeepers can. But between these kind of mistakes and his issues with distribution, and specifically the position he puts his teammates in sometimes, if you're talking about the caliber of goalie that should be playing at this level for Manchester United, give me, Allison, Ederson, Nick Pope, Ramsdale, probably. I would even argue Matt Turner has a case here. And I'm a big Matt Turner guy. We need to see him play consistently in the Premier League before I'm willing to go quite that far. But if I'm United, there are better options out there. To get where United want to be and where this is supposed to be heading with the progress they've made, you have to get more reliability from your goalkeeper. That's the end of the story. That's the bottom line. And I've seen enough from De Gea even before this that I don't trust him to be that guy. Now, the good news for United in terms of this season is that 3 of their final 4 games are at home. They're going to finish this thing pretty much at Old Trafford because they cannot beat good teams away from Old Trafford. It is jarring how bad they've been on the road. And this game was another example of that. But I look at 3 of 4 at home, the fact that they're still a point ahead of Liverpool with a game in hand, the fact that, Liverpool still have to win 3 more, and the law of averages says at some point they're going to not be able to win with the winning streak they're on right now. Now, of course it's possible, just like with City. Of course it's possible they win out. I just have this feeling they're going to drop points somewhere. And maybe that's just a draw, and they end up with 69 points, taking another 7, which would mean United need to win at least 2 of these last 4. I just trust them to do it at Old Trafford. There's a bigger conversation to be had, though, about kind of Manchester United's legacy this season with how things are going. Need to wait till this gets sorted out. Need to wait till the FA Cup final. But I didn't think I would be this open to the possibility of somebody catching them at this point. But that's the situation they found themselves in with the way things have gone these past couple weeks. Then jumping over to Serie A for a few minutes. Huge week in the top 4 race and just the race for European spots in general. AC Milan, big win against Lazio. Inter go and win at Roma, continuing their excellent form recently. Juventus win at Atalanta. And so you had all these teams right behind Napoli matching up this weekend. And what you end up with is Juventus jumping Lazio, who are really struggling at the moment. Inter keeping that 4th place spot. AC Milan 2 points back. And then you've got Atalanta and Roma. To me, Juventus has pretty much locked this up. I still feel okay about Lazio, although they're making their job way more difficult than it needed to be. And the way Inter are playing, I'm taking Inter. But of course, this is coming down to the 2 Milan clubs, it looks like, who are also going to play each other in the Champions League semifinals. I mean, it's going to be a phenomenal end to the season because any other, next week, this could all change again if the teams that lost this weekend win and the Milan clubs and Juventus lose, But this was one of those weekends where you had basically 6-pointers across the board. Your big winners from the city of Milan and Juventus. We're starting to get a little bit of clarity. The question is whether it continues in that direction or whether it all gets thrown back into chaos next week. The other thing I want to talk about briefly is Napoli clinching the Serie A title. Of course, they had a Thursday game, which doesn't line up with my schedule, so I haven't gotten to talk about it yet, and I wanted to at least mention it briefly. I've talked about it at times this season, but now that it's official, there are really 2 things I want to lay out there. First, this team, unlike most kind of Cinderella champions, think 15-16 Leicester, that Lille team, that Monaco team, you could even throw the Ajax team that nearly reached the Champions League final in there. This team is deep enough and in a position where they are able to sustain the losses that are inevitably going to come. You knew with all of those other teams I mentioned, maybe not quite as much Lille, but to a certain extent with all of them, that this was the end of the road. These teams, these players, were going to capitalize on this moment and then kind of go their separate ways. Leicester lose a couple starters, most notably N'Golo Kante. Riyad Mahrez then follows out the door, and that was kind of that for that whole 15-16 group. That Monaco team disbanded almost immediately. Same thing with Ajax. And Lille, yes, have kept some pieces. Some pieces have moved on. You also knew the whole time they weren't getting past PSG again. You look at this Napoli team. Is Osimhen probably going to end up in the Premier League at some point? Yes. Are you probably going to lose Kvaratskhelia? Yes. Maybe not immediately. That's A, right? It is not a done deal that this is just kind of the final moment for this group of players. And second, when those players ultimately leave, A, you feel good about Napoli's ability to replace them because those guys were kind of brought in as replacements. You lost Dries Mertens, Lorenzo Insigne, and Kalidou Koulibaly, 3 of the best players in club history, generally speaking, right? Long-time Napoli legends. And they won the league comfortably in the next season because of their ability to replace them. Also, I've talked about this at other points, but this team is deep enough to sustain losses. Osimhen has been kind of in and out this season. He's been great when he's been on the field, but he's missed some time. And it really hasn't mattered all that much outside of the Champions League. I do think it mattered there. We've seen what they look like without Osimhen. They still look awfully good. And now you're getting, money from winning the league, money from a Champions League run. This is a starting point. Maybe they never get back to exactly this. But I view this very differently than those other teams I was talking about. This is not the kind of culmination or this magical one-off where you're not going to get the same kind of opportunity next season. To me, this is a sustainable thing that you can continue to build, make more runs at the Champions League, make more runs at the Scudetto. Doesn't mean they're going to win the next three. I mean, just look at the parity this league has had since Juventus's control was snapped. But the other part of this, and the reason I feel so confident in that, is that they don't have Manchester City or PSG coming after them next season. Who in this league, if you are Napoli, actually scares you right now? If let's say they lose one of those two guys, and you bring back pretty much everybody else, are you scared by Inter? Are you scared by AC Milan? Juventus? Lazio? They are in a very interesting position here. Because to me, this is sustainable. Again, what that actually means, we're going to have to find out. But you didn't feel this way about any of those other teams I listed. You knew that was the end of the road. That's just not the case here. So we're going to have to see what the summer looks like, have to see what Napoli does in the transfer window. But first and foremost, for now, congratulations. The scenes have been incredible. Got to celebrate it at home finally this weekend. It's an incredible story. It's an important reminder that you can still have these kind of champions, and it makes you feel better about the sport with all of the ugliness that is going on right now, that you can have a club like this get a title for the first time in 33 years, do so in dominant fashion, playing a fantastic style that is so much fun to watch, without the big budget, with a bunch of guys they just kind of found, from Kim replacing Kalidou Koulibaly at the back, Andre Frank Zambo and Gisa. You can go down the list. These weren't, the big names, and yet they've been sensational all season long. That gives you hope for this sport, and that is incredibly important. And it brings some attention to Serie A because they've been so good, because this is one of the stories of the season. That's important too. So congratulations, Napoli. Congratulations, Naples. Can't wait to see what the rest of this party is going to look like and what this team can do moving forward. That is all for today's weekend roundup. Thank you so much for tuning in. Be sure to hit that subscribe button. I'll see you next time.